Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Andrea. I am the Knitting PT on Instagram and YouTube. I'm an orthopedic physical therapist and a knitter and a spinner, and I love all things yarn and fiber. And this is my corner of the internet where I talk about my projects, my finished objects, all things yarn related. Once in a while I throw in a wellness tip. If you want to learn more about how you can craft more ergonomically, or help with your posture or strengthen or stretch, you can look at the reels I have on Instagram. I upload them up here periodically too. You can find all links to everything I'm talking about below. My website, Patreon, my shop, Ko-Fi, Ravelry page, links to any dyers and makers I talk about today will also be linked below. So today is a little bit of a different episode. I'd originally meant this to just be purely my recap of my experience last weekend when I went up to New York Sheep and Wool Festival up in Rhinebeck, New York. I also went to one of the satellite events, Wool and Folk. But unless you're living under a rock, you have probably heard what an experience Wool and Folk was this year, and not a positive one either. I am going to be fairly candid on here and just share my personal experience of being there. I will also be highlighting vendors from Wool and Folk down below in a description box also. There will be a link to where you can see all the vendors who are there so you can go support them. So let's just get the messy bit out of the way. So I will try to remember to timestamp this so that if you don't want to hear about it, you can skip ahead to see the things I got, but I highly encourage you to stick through this part of it. It is really important, I think, to talk about things that are difficult, talk about things that are unpleasant, for the sake of more transparency and also just solidarity and support for people who were done wrong. So, Wool and Folk. So I'd never been to Wool and Folk. I'd never been to any of these events before. This is my first time at quote unquote the entire Rhinebeck experience. And to be honest, I hadn't really followed much of it before anyway. But after I'd been to Wool and Folk, then I learned that there had been some accessibility issues with Wool and Folk in the past. This was only the third year that Wool and Folk happened. And the organizers had said that they would be improving the experience, especially the accessibility issues. So lots of things happened. So these are all things that are from my knowledge, like, go and verify it, fact check if you like. I'm fairly sure they're accurate, 99% sure they're accurate. But Wool and Folk used to be run by two organizers. There's Catherine from Brooklyn General Store and then Felicia from String Things Studio, I believe. And the two of them organized Wool and Folk for the past 2 years. Then they had creative differences this year, so Catherine was no longer part of Wool and Folk anymore. And so it was only Felicia who is running things. So what happened was that it was supposed to be at this one venue. Then about a month before Wool and Folk happened, the venue changed. And to begin with, the venue change was not well communicated. It was literally just through, at first, an Instagram video. And I didn't even know the event changed until one of my friends told me, and then I went and found the video. And then it wasn't until a week later that an email was sent out to ticket holders that the event had changed, or the event venue had changed. Now the event venue changing wasn't just, it was a half an hour difference. It was originally supposed to be in Saugerties, New York, and then it had to change to be in Catskill, New York, which is at least a half an hour north. So it really screwed up a lot of people's plans. People, I know there were vendors who had booked their Airbnbs to be in the Saugerties area so they could be close to the venue to make setup and breakdown much easier. Things like that. Then there were all these things about not well communication about parking and about accessibility for handicap spaces and things like that. So we went up with the best hopes, hoping it would be a great event. We'd been told that Wool and Folk was great last year, that had been really fun and open, and that it wasn't as crowded as New York Sheep and Wool can feel like. So we really had high hopes going in. Well, we got there. First of all, it was raining all day, which that is not the fault of event planners at all. None of us can control the weather. However, sure, the weather probably contributed a little bit to how everyone felt about the event. But honestly, even if it had been raining, it still would have been awful because there were way too many people there. The way it was run was there were no event slots. You just bought a ticket for the whole day. So there wasn't any like time slots. Like I think Cake Palooza, you bought according to his time slots of what time you were going to go. So when we got there, it was raining. There was a huge long line of people waiting to get in. And before we even got in, one of my friends, Shannon of Jodor Fibers, she was vending there along with our friend Sylvia, Camellia Fiber Company. She called me to tell me, and this was like literally like 15 minutes before the event opened. She called me and said, hey, our booth is flooding and we have to move the entire thing. And she was really distraught. And I immediately kind of panicked a little bit for her because I knew like what a big deal this was. And also the thought of your booth flooding with your merchandise, with your yarn getting wet, like that's terrible. Like that could be a huge loss in revenue if your stuff is wet, like who wants to buy it? And so I went to the people who were in the front, like the volunteers, and I said, hey, my friend's a vendor inside. She's having to move her booth. Is there any way I could get in early to just help her? And they were like, no. And they weren't like super nice about it either. So I was just like, okay. And so I waited until they let us in. And when we went, it was just like a rush of people, right? As you expect. So I rushed. She had told me over the phone kind of what general area she'd been moved to. So I ran to where her booth was. They were still in the middle of like moving their stuff over. So people were coming up to where their booth was now and being like, oh, I had come to buy your yarn, but I can see you're still setting up. Their yarn were all still in plastic bags, so they had to hastily throw everything in bags and move it. So I stayed. I helped them shove as much yarn back on the shelves as they could. And then once they had all their yarn back up, then I was like, okay, I'm gonna get out of the way now so you can reorganize things and go. But it was just awful. So it's kind of hard to describe a little bit, but the way we'd been led to believe was that, well, first of all, there had been all these posts about how the new venue was going to be so much better because it had all the square footage, all this indoor space, so that if it rained, the vendors were inside, so it wouldn't be a big deal. Well, guess what? Half the vendors were outside in the rain, and sure, they had like little booth things, but you could clearly see it wasn't doing much to hold the rain back out. Also, the event itself, where it was Foreland in Catskills, it was on a downhill slope. So all the rain is coming down the slope and getting the grass and the ground all wet and muddy. And all the tents that were outside either had no lighting, really poor lighting, or they were just like super small and cramped. Like for example, I thought for sure I would shop Explore Knits and Fibers, Allie, because I always do. I could not even get to her booth because first of all, it was swarmed with people. Second off, that tent was so dark, I couldn't even see the colors of the yarn from like, you know, just standing away. I was just like, there's so many people, I can't get in there. The ground was super muddy that you didn't even want to walk in it. It was like straight up mud. Yeah, and then so all the tents were like that. They were all really close together. So when you were walking between tents, it was literally just like single file. And then with everyone's rain jackets and umbrellas, it was just super crowded. The vendors that were lucky enough to be inside, they were also crammed in there. Like it was literally a fire hazard. Like you went in the building and the lighting was awful in there too. It was all fluorescent and warm and weird. You couldn't see colors very well, like yarn colors very well. When you went in, it was just like instant traffic jam. Everyone was standing shoulder to shoulder. You couldn't move. It took all the desire I had to shop like out the window. I was just, you know, I've spoken before that I have anxiety, I have social anxiety, and all of it just went like woof all the way up because of how crammed it was. And you know, literally if there had been like a stampede or a fire or anything, like people probably would have gotten really hurt. If there was a fire, we would have all died in the building because there was no way anyone could get out. Yeah, the whole thing was just awful. There were vendors who were up on the 5th floor of a building and there was only one small elevator. So a lot of people were walking all the way up the stairs to get there. And, you know, knitters, you know, we are a wide age demographic, but there are a lot of like more elderly, more mobility disabled people. And that was not great for them to be able to get up to the 5th floor. And it sucked for the vendors who were on the 5th floor because half the time probably people didn't know they were up there or couldn't get to them. And not to mention the vendors who were outside, like everyone was under the assumption that they would be inside. And so a lot of them didn't have things to be prepared to be outside. When I was told by vendors that when they showed up to set up everything on Thursday, there had been no pre-made map of where you're supposed to go. So it was like first come, first serve for booth spots. Yeah, the whole thing was just awful. And my heart really broke for the vendors, especially for my friends, Shannon and Sylvia, who had to move their booth last minute. And, you know, that's certainly traumatizing. That's certainly infuriating. I will tell you personally, when I was helping them putting their yarn back on the shelves, I saw the organizer, Felicia, walk by them several times and not once look at them. Like not even look at them, not even come in and check and say, hey, are you guys all right? I'm sorry this is happening. Like there was none of that. And that was appalling. And you know, at the time that I'm recording this, which is Tuesday morning after that whole weekend, there's still been no message from her. So below I will be linking a list of all the vendors who are Wool and Folk. Someone has very kindly compiled this list with links to their websites. If you feel inclined to, please go support them. I will certainly be supporting some dyers who I had been meaning to go check out in person, but couldn't because I either actually couldn't figure out where they were or just couldn't get to them physically. And I will be supporting them as well. And even if you don't have the financial means to support or don't plan to, you know, just resharing their stories on Instagram, sending them a DM or leaving a comment of support would really go a long way too. Yeah. Like, you know, I will say like, it was just, like I walked around with Megan, Kimchi & Co. for the entirety of Wool and Folk. She also helped to come and, you know, put their yarns back on their shelves. And we were both so overwhelmed by what went on that an hour in, we actually left the event for a little bit. I had parked on Main Street in Catskills and I needed to feed my meter. So we walked off to feed the meter and then we just like stood outside on the street for a little bit just to like decompress a little, like release some of the stress before we went back in. Yeah. So that was awful. And we were really sapped of energy after. So I cannot imagine how the vendors must feel when I, as a mere shopper, felt so overwhelmed and so drained after. I cannot imagine how the vendors must have felt. Like it really must be awful. So yeah, so if you want to read more about what went on, you can go to people's stories. There is also threads on Reddit. If you Google it, I will also link to it too, so you can see like vendor accounts of what was going on for them too. All right. Moving on from that. So on Saturday, we went to New York Sheep and Wool, which, you know, after Wool and Folk, felt like such a breath of fresh air. It felt so open and it felt like the experience we thought Wool and Folk would be. We did no shopping there. By then, like any desire to shop had really just been sapped out of us entirely. We just wanted to see people and meet people. So we went to the Asian Makers Meetup on the Hill and then the Wandering Flock Meetup afterwards. And I met so many people. And a lot of you who watch the podcast or watch my reels online came up to say hello, which was really sweet. Like I really enjoyed meeting every one of you. Thank you so much for saying hello and for saying such kind things. I really appreciated that. And I really loved meeting you guys and putting some faces to names. Yeah, and so now I'm going to show you what I did get. All the stuff I did get was at Wool and Folk. I did shop. I think I made like a few purchases. So I'm gonna show you, and yeah. And I know I said in my previous video that I would take some footage and some vlogging. Suffice to say, I did not do any of it because, first of all, it was raining. Second of all, I could not even get the bandwidth to like remember to do that. Yeah, so sorry. Okay, so what I got. So first, I did get some yarn from the Wandering Flock. She was the only booth that I really made it to. I really wanted to see Geraldine, so I did find her. And I got a sweater quantity of this color. This is Rust. This beautiful orangey brown color. This is on her DK base. Yeah, so I got that. Then I made a point, of course, and I'd always been planning to anyway, to shop for my friends Sylvia and Shannon. So I got more of Camellia Fiber Company's Yak DK base. In my previous video, I talked about how I used it in my striped Henley pullover that is a test knit, and I meant to actually show you all, but I'll show you all in the next episode because I did finish it and I did wear it to Wool and Folk, though you cannot see it in most photos because I'm wearing a rain jacket. But I will show it probably on the next regular podcast episode. But I did use the Yak DK base in it. I'm happy to report that it did not itch me, and so I think this is a base I'm good with. So this is the Yak DK base. It is 65% merino wool, 20% silk, 15% yak, 230 yards for 100 grams. This is the colorway Matcha. This beautiful mossy, well, not mossy, like just a tea dark tea green matcha. Well, not really matcha green either, because matcha is quite bright actually, but you know what I mean. It's beautiful. So I got more of that. Then, of course, I had to get yarn from my friend Shannon of Jador Fibers. I had been meaning to get this colorway when she posted it online. This was the Woolfolk exclusive colorway she made. It's called Harvest Festival. So it's beautiful peachy pink base with speckles. I got this on the Freya DK base, which is 75% merino, 25% nylon. Sorry, ran out of room on my camera, so I had to close it. So that was it for the yarn I got at Woolfolk. And then I did get a mug from a pottery maker. Sorry for the noise, I'm unwrapping it. This is from a store called Pip Daddy. And they had these cute ceramics. So I got this mug. They had some really cute yarn bowls too that had a strap on it, so it looked like a project bag too. So this is the mug I got. Let me take the price sticker off so I can show you the inside. Oop, didn't do a good job of that. Yeah, so they're called Pip Daddy. Their stuff was super cute. There was another pottery place there who I did not get to see, but I saw their stuff online and I am gonna go shop them as well. They're called Golden Earth Designs, I believe. They also have buttons, ceramic buttons and things like that. So yeah, so again, they'll be all linked below. Yeah, so that's what I got in Woolfolk. I know. Pretty modest haul for me, if I'm being very honest. And you know, these were all dyers I was planning to purchase from before already. There were other dyers I was planning to look at and hoping to purchase from, like Coats & Co. Fiber, Newburgh Yarn Co., to name a few. So, you know, I will, like I said before, be checking them out online and shopping their updates when they get back. Because the other thing too is because of the chaos and the mess and everything, a lot of vendors really either didn't break even or didn't make as much of a profit as they probably should have if things had been in better condition, if things had been more compliant. Yeah, I mean, like everything I said earlier about it is just like the tip of the iceberg. You know, I cannot imagine also for the shoppers who were wheelchairs. I saw several in wheelchairs. I don't know how they got down that gravel slope because that is a danger. And I did hear that people tripped and fell and that, you know, people got hurt. I didn't see any of it myself, but I really do not know how people who are in wheelchairs even got down there to begin with, because there was no other accessible way down. There was no ramp. It was just gravel going down a slope. Yeah. Anyway, so that is all I got at Woolfolk. Then afterwards, we walked around the main street of Catskill a little bit to decompress and get some food, and we discovered this super cute shop. It's called Made by Hudson, like Made X Hudson, I believe is what it's called. Yes, here's the bag logo. And this store, they sell, all the things they sell are like handmade in there. So they have a lot of clothing. And there was also a small pop-up there with some yarn. And so I got this there. So this is, I've never heard of this company before, but this is called American yarn. And this yarn is worsted tweed. And it is 3-ply merino rambouillet Shanico wool, 89% with 6% acrylic and rayon flex. It is 237 yards. It's interesting because I never heard of them, but it says on their tag in here, it says American yarn comes from ranches of Shanico Wool Co., which are certified on the responsible wool standard and audited annually to ensure the welfare of the sheep, the land they graze on, and the workers who tend both, which is amazing. So this is the yarn. It's super soft and bouncy. Yeah, I'm really excited to knit with it. Merino Rambouillet blend, which I've never seen. Yeah, so I got a smaller quantity of it. I'm just showing you 2. I got 4. Yeah, so really excited about this. That shop was really cute, really lovely. So if you're ever in the area, like check that shop out. Okay, now on to, so I mentioned we did some meetups and I did receive some little gifts from some of you, so thank you. So I want to show them. So first of all, I met Ruby and Rose's Yarn. She was vending at, I think, Indian Tangled, which I didn't go to, but she came and found me. She was really sweet. And she gave me a skein of yarn that she thought I would like. And I do love it. This is on her soft rose base, which is fingering weight 85-25, 85-15, can't do math, 85-15 merino nylon 4-ply. And this is the colorway Stormy Shore. Look how pretty it is. And she actually showed me she had a Seasons cardigan on her that was knit up in this base, and it looks beautiful knit up. So Addie, thank you so much if you're watching this. It was really sweet. I did not expect a gift of any sort. You know, it still blows my mind when people recognize me and come up to say hello, especially when they're people who I think are like bigger than me. Like, I did not expect Addie to know who I was. And then she was surprised that I knew who she was, which that was silly, Addie. Yeah, but Ruby and Rose's yarn, beautiful. And then I forgot her handle, but there was a wonderful person at the Asian Makers Meetup who was giving us yarn cozies. So this is the one I picked from her, very on brand for me, what she did say. I think it's Sarah's Creative Corner. Yes, it was Sarah. So thank you, Sarah. Can't wait to use it. And then there was Tanya. I'm looking for the other piece of it. Where'd it go? Here it is. So Tanya had made all these bracelets and was giving them out too. So this is from Tanya. Tanya does, sorry, I can't read it. Tanya does stuff. That's her Instagram. And she made these bracelets. This one says Rhinebeck 2023. And then this one says Yarnivore. Yeah, so super cute. Thank you, Tanya. So yeah, so that is everything I got everything I got from my first weekend at Rhinebeck. Now, my recap thoughts. Will I go back? Not to Norfolk. I will not go back to that. If I were to go back to the whole Rhinebeck thing, I would think I would check out India Entangled and Cake Palooza next time, honestly. New York Sheep and Wool itself was delightful. I didn't do any shopping because I was just tapped out. But I think if I were to go again, I would try to walk around more, look at the fiber there, look at some of the other vendors there, actually see the sheep. Yeah, but I definitely will not be going back to Woolfolk in the future. Yeah, so leave any thoughts below, I guess. I know I was very candid and probably more honest, brutally honest than I usually am, but I think it's important in this case to be so. And yeah, support those wool and folk vendors if you can, okay? I will see you guys next time with a regular episode. Happy knitting.